Okay, let's begin. I'm Lou, and nice to see everybody today. I think we'll start with our chalice lighting, and then we'll have joys and concerns. Let's say together the chalice lighting. May the light we now kindle inspire us to our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit, freedom. We'll have time for joys and concerns, which are an integral part of our time together. So come forward or stay where you're at, whichever you like to do.
Hi, my name's Meg. I just wanted to express my gratitude in giving the sermon last week. I really enjoyed it, and I got a lot of positive feedback. The book that I forgot to bring that I wanted to mention was this one that I read every day. It's called A Grateful Heart, and it has daily blessings for the evening meal from Buddha to the Beatles. So it's really cool. It's got a lot of quotes from people like Martin Luther King, Thich Nhat Hanh, and so forth. And I just wanted to put out another joy that I still have a good relationship with my ex-husband. You know, that's kind of precious to have that. You know, we have a child together. She's 28, but, you know, we never, after we split, we never talked ill of each other. And I think that really contributed to Abby growing up to be a healthy young adult. So, thank you.
Anyone else like to share a joy or concern? Okay, let's start. Like to look, expose the objectives for today are basically one thing: to merge two things that we cannot live without. And it's going to be an opinion and a fact combined. And it's also something I want to have each one of you search as we go through the time together. What is your experience with the merger of these two ideas, and what is your actual time? And have that something that while I'm speaking, you can be going through your own heart and soul of how you've experienced something similar to what I'm saying. That's a key part of the objective today, is to personalize it with each person without having to feel that they have to have their feelings exposed or have them be exclusive to only themselves or inclusive with others. It's strictly whatever's going through your mind is important. You don't have to say anything, but there will be some time for anyone that likes to give verbal external feedback. So I'd like to start with the first thing that I feel that people cannot live without is the H2O cycle. Now, you've probably heard me talk about this informally in the past. It's simply a chemical compound made up of two elements completely in the universe. And in this, our environment that we live in, we have great examples of H2O always present. Now keep in mind that we're talking about things that my feeling is that we can't live without. Maybe you don't have to share that feeling, but just think about what I'm going to offer during the morning. So the H2O cycle briefly is that you have three states of matter. They're called states of matter in the universe that we've been able to identify. One is a gas, one is a liquid, and one is a solid. So we'll look at the first one, which is a gas. In the atmosphere, which is precious to this Earth environment, we have something called H2O suspended in the gas state, which is clouds, humidity, vapor, steam, anything that's kind of flowing. If you look outside, you could see white wisps of H2O in a gas state known as a cloud. In this area, the blue sky is never very, very blue because there's so much gas H2O in the atmosphere that it blocks the blue light from coming to us. So the sky is really kind of a grayish blue because of the high prevalence of H2O in the atmosphere. One thing about H2O, it's entirely sensitive to temperature. It changes its state of matter only when you change the temperature. So when it's heated, at a high level, it becomes a gas. When you cool it, which is known as condensation, it turns into a liquid known as water. So most of us identify H2O, that word, with water, but it's only one of the 3 states of matter. That's one. The third final form is the solid form of matter, which is ice and particularly snow. And snow only forms when you have H2O in the gas state in the atmosphere. It's frozen instantly and it changes to a solid, which is a snowflake. So what I brought to show around is the solid state. It's easy to see the gas. We all know water is the liquid state, but this is some incredible demonstration of the solid state of H2O. Some of us don't look forward to this in a few months, but it takes form in these particular things, which I'll pass around. You could bring it back toward the congregation. These are obviously crystals. They're 6-sided. When H2O becomes a solid, it forms a crystal, and that's why each one of these has 6 sides. The key thing is when you're walking along during the time of the season when these are prevalent, one lands on your sleeve, particularly if it's a dark colored sleeve, you will see intact one of these landing on your sleeve, literally. Particularly if the flake makes it down to the surface intact or is not joined to another flake. It's a marvelous, incredible sight. It personalizes our relationship with H2O, often maligned in those months when we look at cold weather. But I wanted to just point out how incredibly these things are geometrically and the form of the crystal. And it's H2O. It's no different from the gray suspended gas. It's the same compound. Thanks. And the reason we're talking about this is I want to make sure everyone understands that we cannot live without this compound in one of the 3 states. It is absolutely necessary for our existence in this universe, the way we live on this particular site in the universe. So I'll just give you another minute to look at those, and then we'll transfer to another huge, absolutely necessary to live with. Those things, of course, are trillions of them fall in a typical time in our life and around here. So, but what you actually see is they're massed together in social volume, but if we're looking at them singled out as what they actually look like when they fall. And it's a quick freeze, lowering the temperature of the gas into a solid, bypassing the liquid state in the upper atmosphere. So that's when you get, so you go, condensation, you go from gas to liquid to solid. Evaporation or melting, you go from solid to liquid to gas. So if one takes a whole pan of those flakes, bring it into your, I recommend during the winter you take a pan full of these flakes, bring them into your house or apartment. Go from solid to liquid. Then I recommend, you'll see that the water escapes into the atmosphere as steam. So you're actually going from a liquid back to a gas. With the same flakes that you started out with becomes a gas through heating. And the pan becomes empty because it became a gas because of the empty pan now. But you did not, the H2O that you started out with, a snowflake, is still up in the atmosphere now as a gas. It's strictly temperature, up and down, up and down. And that's what we live with day in, day out. When it changes from gas to liquid, it rains, and during the winter you could have a very cloudy sky, hit cold air, hit that, turn to snowflakes. Then they melt, and then they evaporate, and the whole situation goes up and down, up and down. It's going on all day long. The important thing, remember, is what this process is absolutely necessary for our life. Life as we know it is entirely dependent on H2O. So I'll leave that part of the time with us, think about all that kind of thing. And I want to merge that, what I feel is another absolute necessity in life, a little more subjective, shall we say, or open to opinion, but that is, the title of today's talk is Love, You Gotta Be Kidding Me. So we're gonna look at some of the aspects of love that are out there, open to interpretation, also open to your experiences. So I'm speaking, I'd just like you to hear something and then say to yourself, well, I've had this experience. Just to yourself, what I've experienced in a love way, or something that it really captured my essence of life in a love way. So I feel that because of H2O is absolutely necessary, so is love. And in the hippie movement, we said when people are not loved, they climb the walls. And unfortunately, they don't always know why. Many times it's because they're not loved, they can't express love, they can't receive it, they're not getting it, they've been handicapped, they've been told that they're not possible to do this situation, but often they end up psychologically climbing the walls of frustration. And unfortunately, too many people don't know why. But that's open to a whole nother time. So I'm going to look at some examples in my life that I think back up this absolute necessity and absolutely look at things that I said to myself, you got to be kidding me when I've experienced these things. The first example I would like to present is a woman that was about in her early 30s at the time. She was severely handicapped with Down syndrome. Most of you probably know a little bit about the symptoms and experiences of people that have that. Her situation was quite severe. She could not be left alone. She always had to be supervised. She never spoke a word. Her parents and her sister and brother assumed total control of her needs in life. They sort of covered for her at home, and then she went to an institution during the week for further treatments and love and so on. So her name was Ashley. Now Ashley's, this family invited me to come to their residence in Ransomville I think it was 2018 for Resurrection Day, also known as Easter. And they were gonna have a dinner and so on. So they picked me up at my residence on Cedar here. And I was in the back seat of this SUV, and her parents were in the front seat. And we were just on our way to Ransomville. So Ashley's sitting next to me. I knew her condition. I just figured she was going to be there. And to make a long story short, when we got to her home, she was segregated by necessity and unfortunate circumstances. She had to be left alone, and she played with these balls and stayed to herself in another room. And so on the way to Ransomville, we're sitting there. All of a sudden, something happened. I'm just expecting that she's going to be there, right? She starts stroking my face with her hands. absolutely blew my mind. She started just going like this to my face. I said, this is unbelievable. You gotta be kidding me. And I'm just sitting there figuring, well, okay, I'll just sit there and let her do her thing. And this was a total shock, obviously, because I'm not experienced around these people a lot, but I was so enamored, touched. So I just let her do it, and she just kept going like this. So then I figured, well, there's a lot more to this person than just her condition that she's been defined as. She's expressing love. Well, okay, not exactly expected, but it was absolutely incredible that she was so capable of this love situation, despite everything that we as people had ever been taught about handicaps or various severities and potentials or lack of such. But she's just going like this. Okay, so we got down there, and the end of the story was she was by herself the rest of the day. She never could actually express any human social skills because of her condition, but she knew how to love. Absolutely incredible. So that was an eye-opener, and again, she had no other, she continued on with her manifestations of her problems, and the key thing was that her parents and her sister and brother were willing to always make her part of the family. She was always, wherever they went, she was included. They took turns of taking care of her when she wasn't at the daycare treatment. She was part of the family, but she had this situation where she was just doing this. So I learned that this, not so much a surprise, but a revelation. So keeping all that in mind, maybe you're thinking of something similar that you may have been exposed to, but whatever. So now this is early spring of 2021, and the country was sort of merging out of the COVID pandemic segregation situation. So I'm at Red Coach Inn, which is a well-known great restaurant here in the city, and it was, I think it was March, it was a spring day, Saturday, and it was myself and another family of four in what they call the Rapids room there, overlooking the gorge and the upper Rapids. And his two parents and a girl about 5 and a boy about 4. So they had ordered first, and they were finishing their meal, and then my order was taken. And we were the only people in that part of the restaurant itself. So they finished eating, and then comes mind blower number 2 or 3, actually. The girl gets out of her chair. She's 5 years old, approximately. She gets out of her chair. She walks over to her dad, they're sitting one each part of the table. She walks over to her dad. Keep in mind what I shared about Ashley. She walks over to her dad, gets on his lap, puts her knees on his lap. Now they're face to face. What does she start doing? Takes her little hands, starts caressing her dad's face. You gotta be kidding me. The exact same thing from a 5-year-old girl that was coming from a early 30s woman that was severely handicapped. Now we have a 5-year-old girl at that stage of human development. If you know anything about Piaget, kids go through various stages until adulthood. But she's going like this to her dad. Exact same thing, exact same motion from two varying elements of our populations, if you want to call it that, expressing this incredible love again. So I'm sitting there, you got to be kidding me, number 2. I was absolutely shocked. The exact same thing. I'm sitting there, I'm saying, this is incredible. And she was not shy. She just kept going like this with her hands in a public place, little less. Now, keep in mind, she has a 4-year-old brother, right? That's her story's half the story. The mother, who's been holding the boy, she's been kind of holding him and flipping him around and all this stuff. She puts him on the floor, 5 feet away from me. What does he do? He walks over to me, boom, plants his entire body so tight against myself, from ankle to neck. He's so fused with me, we could have been Siamese twins. He was so intent on the feeling of love. He wanted to just embrace me. Now, he's never seen me before. I've never seen him. And he's doing this because he's moved to do it. He's just showing love because that's what's moving his heart. So I'm sitting there, obviously surprised. I looked up at his mother, and she said, "Oh, he's just looking for a big hug." Okay, that's a little more than a hug, but this lasted for a few minutes. He didn't just come over and say, shake hands or touch my arm. He just fused himself to me. I'm sitting there, okay, you know, sound familiar. You gotta be kidding me, because I'm not expecting this, again, from a 4-year-old boy, you know, or his sister for that matter, a few minutes before. So this is going on, and I'm just trying to embrace him back. I didn't want to show any kind of repulsion toward him. It was just an incredible act of love. So here we are again. We're looking at something that's so basic in life that people want to express it. And here's situation number 2, where the subjects have decided that they are going to express this love. So it makes you feel so loved back. So to make a long story short, we started talking, the 4 of us, and they were from Allegheny, New York, which is a little east of Olean. That's where St. Bonaventure University is. They were visiting from down there. And we talked and all this stuff. But the main thing was that here's love being just put out there, just for the sake of it. You know, I didn't expect to see this. I didn't expect to feel this at all. But there it was, another situation where people are expressing this love, and they're not afraid, they're not hampered, they're not feeling guilty, or ramifications are not worried about, they're just doing it. So that was another incident where I felt that it was such a, I don't know how to express it. You start thinking of words of love that it has a feeling where you can't put it into words anymore. So that was the situation where 2 instances where the exact same physical demonstration of love was offered and accepted. Now the third thing was I started thinking of all these things after that particular day, and I started thinking, well, this reminds me of stuff when I was growing up at about the same age. So I thought, I grew up with my parents, and they were around all the time, and you know, all very loving, of course, but sometimes people need a reminder of what's being offered to them and you are accepting. So I thought of, it came to mind, actually I didn't have to think very much. They were sitting in our parlor in a chair, being a husband and wife. They were 2 people using one chair to be intimate at the time, you know, just sort of sitting together tight in one chair. Chair meant for 1, but they were 2 merged. So I walk into the dining room, which is adjacent to this room they were sitting in, and I see them. Oh, first thing I do, now this is way before the first 2 incidents. This is when I was about the age of the children that I talked about before. I see them there, and without thinking, I just run over to them, jump into the chair with them. So we're now 3 people, you know, merging as one. And all I could say is, well, we're the 3 bears. if you're familiar with the Goldilocks and the Three Bears story, the first thing I could think was, well, this is us. And so we're just the three of us all in a pile meant for one person. And I'm just sitting there saying, well, we're the three bears. But I say this, I mention this incident because it's a love just jumps out at you when it's offered. It's hard to resist. So even as a child of about the same age as the two at the inn, the restaurant, I did this act of just running and jumping, and because I recognized, the key thing is recognize that that's a love source. There's a love source there. You could be 5 years old or whatever, and you're going to recognize it. Even they say infants bond to their parents because love is offered and they bond back and they form a relationship. Well, I recognized the relationship in that chair. So I just jumped in, and that was that. So the key thing is recognizing what's out there, not being closed-minded or not saying, oh, that's not for me, that's for somebody else. You never know what's going to show up, right? So that was another incredible time. And it was something that I noticed. Then I thought of another time with my parents also. I was probably the same age, and Saturday mornings my dad would be in bed because he didn't get up early to go to work. He worked Monday through Friday usually. So I knew that they were in the next bedroom together, still in bed. I would get out of bed and go jump in the bed with them early on Saturday morning because I knew, again, this was the love source. This is where it's at. And there would be kind of people who were just jostling around and just being there because that's where the love source was. Now, this again, I was about 4 or 5 years old that I'm describing both of those situations with them. Not a huge amount of intellectual capacity yet, but that love is so basic that it jumps out at you. It's there, it's recognized. So that's another situation that really, building on this, you gotta be kidding me, because now we recognize something. Then when I went to SUNY Geneseo, my last year there, I don't know how it happened, but I met this lady named Diane. Diane was actually a freshman from Babylon, out in Long Island. And she was, I don't know how I met her, and you'll find out that I don't know how I lost contact with her later on. But I met her and I said, well, why don't we go out to this place, sort of have like a date. And I said, well, why don't we go out to this place called Varsity Inn? There's music there, there's a tavern atmosphere, there's some dancing, some food. It's about 3-4 miles from the campus. So we got in my car. We drove out there, just talked on the way out, no big expectations. We got there, the place was closed. The parking lot was dark. There was no lights, absolutely couldn't see a thing. The place was closed. So what do? Well, we just sat in my car, and to make a long story short, we just start kissing each other passionately and expressing our just joy or whatever to be together. All we did was this incredible 1 to 2 hours of just passionate kissing where we just embraced. There was no other agenda. There was no other expectation of further involvement in that area. So there was no expectations like, I want you to do this and you want to do that, and what are we gonna do? We just did this kissing stuff. And it was just totally legitimate, totally honest. There was no probing hands, it was not considered some sort of cosmic foreplay. We're just sitting there kissing passionately. And then we decided that it was time to go back to the campus in the dark, so we drove back there. And but the reason I mention this is because this is another example of love in its pure form. Just just desired to be expressed. Nothing, no agenda, no this, I don't want to see any more of that in the future, you don't owe me nothing, I'm not expecting something back from you. It was strictly kissing and affection and appreciation for the presence of another person in a loving situation. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I eventually lost track of her, but not quite completely. But we never really went out together again. And then all these years later, that was in the fall of 1968. That's how long ago that was. To this minute, to this day, I remember that night more than any other situation with another person. It was strictly love-based. It was such an incredible exchange of affection without control, without, I want this from you, I want that, I expect blah, blah, blah. It was strictly, we'll love each other. And the only remembrance I have of her is that the 4 years that she went to Geneseo, she's got at least one picture of herself in the 4 yearbooks that covered her 4 years there. So once in a while I look at her picture, and I never tried to contact her again, but I found out through a directory that she became married, she had 3 kids, and became a teacher in a place called Setauket, Long Island, just outside of Stony Brook. She is now 75 years old. I'm 79. At the time, I was 22 when I first met her. But the point is that love becomes something so incredible because of the fouling of our mind. Unfortunately, we tend to not recognize it when it's really there, when it's really manifesting itself as something that you have to make you feel fulfilled. You could think of some things in your own life, as I suggested, where you've had something similar, where you've had something so necessary that you felt that I'm now a complete person. Somebody actually cares about me. And in the end, if you don't have something in your life, you're probably going to exhibit things that are not manifesting something good to you, and that's when you end up with problems. So that was back a long time ago, but it was such an incredible pure love thing that meant so much more to me than other similar experiences of dates or this or that. And the key thing was, it was only the kissing affection. There was nothing else attached to, I expect more of you or less, blah, blah, blah. So that was another thing. Another situation that comes up for me is that I lived in California for many years, actually 28, and I would take trips back and forth to Niagara Falls to visit my mom because my dad had died, and I was coming back here twice a year to visit her. And so every time I would come, I'd arrive, and the first thing she would do was grab me by the shoulders and just kiss me on the lips, not just a little thing on the cheek. She'd just kiss me in the lips for like 15 seconds. Now that may sound a little over the top to some people, but the key thing was it was a show of affection. She was showing a relationship. You are mine, I am yours. I'm never gonna let go of you. I'm gonna do something that's so a little over the top to express my love. And every time I'd come and go from the area, she would do precisely this lip kissing, which is a little, like I say, maybe a little overboard to some people, but that was her way of saying, you are mine, never gonna let go of you. So no matter what goes on, this is our relationship. This is huge. And it was strictly love for the sake of it. And at that point, after we shared all these things, it's no longer a joke. Nobody's kidding anybody anymore. You're actually experiencing something that you feel is so powerful that you don't ever live without this stuff. Whether it's a memory or something in the future, in the present, it's strictly, you never want to say anymore that somebody's kidding you. It's actually the truth. It's real. So it kind of sums up a lot of things. Like we've looked at two things that are absolutely necessary: H2O and its three states of matter, and love in various expressions in our lives. Maybe a little unorthodox, a little something we don't expect to actually experience, but when you realize that nobody's kidding anybody, this is life. This is what we really want. Whether we feel fulfilled or not is personal, but to me it was huge. So what I'd like to do now is, I think what I want to do is read something that I think is the ultimate expression of love that was ever written or said or spoken. A little bit, it may seem a little bit like off the subject, but what I'd like to read was actually, I consider the greatest love statement ever issued in human. I'm going to start reading it, and you probably recognize it immediately, who's speaking and what he's trying to say. It's a little bit, maybe make the connection of why he's saying is the necessity of what he's saying, what he's got to capture, something that he feels cannot be done without. So we looked at H2O, we need that. We looked at love in this world, we looked at that. Now we're going to look at a person who's very famous, but my editorial comment would be, I think we as a people need to really absorb what's being said in this thing I'm going to read, because I feel that we're too lacking in love as a people, as a society, a nation, a world, whatever. And this is a very, very incredible, but you'll recognize it immediately. And it's a little bit emotional, so I'm going to get through it. But anyway, at the end of this, I'll have some opportunities for people to offer some feedback or whatever you want to call it. So let's start with, this is November 19th, 1863. 7 years ago, our fathers and mothers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men and women are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We met on a great battlefield of that war. We are met to dedicate a portion of it as a final resting place of those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But on a larger sense, we cannot dedicate and we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who've struggled here have consecrated far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work that they have thus far so nobly carried on. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that the nation shall, under God, have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Okay, why is that love? Because it's just love. It's just a statement of what we need to do, what has to be done, what cannot be denied. The objective is final, to bring people together in love, because that's what we have to do here. So you all probably heard that statement before, or that considered a masterpiece of communication and oratory. Very short, concise, but it brings out something that I really chose this because if you look at the situation today, there's too much what I call dualistic thinking. You versus me, us versus them, all these kind of we're this, they're that, all kinds of labels and avenues and situations in life. Everyone wants to say, I'm you, you're me. Well, this speech, I think, says that we can't be beholden to strictly dualistic thinking. We have to be unified. We have to be one. And I think that this little excerpt I read, if anything could be said of the ultimate love statement that has to be put forward, is just that. We cannot be dividing into things a million times. So anyway, at this point, if anyone has something they'd like to share with us, you're welcome to do so. If not, you can keep it to yourself. Not expected to say anything unless you really want to share. So I won't put anyone on the spot. Just be yourself. If we'll take a minute to just think through that. If no one comes forward, we'll do our chalice extinguishing. So just take a minute to reflect, or whatever you want to call it. Just be yourself.
Hi.
Oh, okay.
I had a couple of thoughts. One related to when Lou talked about people embracing his face, and I was thinking that you often hear that the people with limited vision or who are sightless will try to acquaint themselves with someone that they're trying to get a sense of by embracing their face. They feel the person's face, this person they're hearing but can't see, to get a fuller and better sense of what this person is about. And I'm thinking that, there are other ways that a blind person could approach someone, but this seems to be the one you hear about. And I'm thinking that might relate somehow to the type of experience that Lou had, where people did that with him to try to get a sense of what he was about, or express some connection. And the other one was his reference to the Gettysburg Address. Dale Carnegie was, in my mind, probably the best teacher of public speaking who ever lived, and it really understood how people relate to each other, communicate with each other. And it was his belief that Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which is what we heard this morning, was probably the best speech ever given. So I think it's, what would you say, altogether fitting and proper that that you should cite that as an example, because certainly that passage is held in very high regard. Thank you.
Anyone else? So want to share anything? It's not obligatory. It's just something that, if you want, it's strictly up to you. Hi, Jen.
I used to work at Opportunities Unlimited, which is now a different name, but just living and taking care of people with developmental disabilities, and that's what I also thought about with Lou. And it just made me remember my days there, and it was just so loving and joyful because you could just go in and have fun and be silly. And it was like they were, you're just playing with little kids, just having fun, goofing around, and loving them, just touching them. They would just love it, it reminded me of that. And then Lou, speaking of his mother, I was crying, so I was thinking about Emerson, and it was really beautiful, think of your mother, and then think about Emerson, 60 years from now, when I'm gone, and he'll be thinking of me, hopefully, with the same loving in his heart. And I really loved it, Lou.
Okay, so one last thing, that H2O is around all the time. It's not going anywhere. And our need for it is not going to ever end. And the people and all the living creatures are still around us, and they want to be loved, and we want to love them back. And we just shouldn't have to say, you got to be kidding me. It should be strictly expectation. It's going to happen because it's expectation. There's no way out of it. So thank you. Let's do our chalice extinguishing. Someone want to come up and we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thanks. That's all, folks.